I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Artemis Scantalides. She's got quite a background. Large part of your background is in the fitness industry, and now you're going into business coaching. But Artemis, I'd love it if you could kind of tell everyone your story sort of from your own perspective. And first of all, thank you for being on the podcast.
For sure. Thank you, Jason. I'm super excited to be on the podcast. Yes. So my husband and I, we own a company called Empower You Online Coaching, and we provide business coaching and mentorship services now to all entrepreneurs. We help all entrepreneurs start, grow, and scale their online businesses, and also work on not just business strategy, but the mindset necessary to support being a high performer and having these high performance goals of building your own business. And also a large focus, we'll get into it today, but like a large focus is money mindset coaching. And prior to that, we did start out when we pivoted to business coaching, we did start out working with strictly fitness professionals and healthcare professionals, but we found that we're attracting all entrepreneurs. So we decided to expand who we work with, because the framework that we teach really applies to all businesses. And from there, prior to that, I would say it was like full time since 2008. So that was 12 years, 2008 to 2020. I worked as a fitness professional. So I started out, and prior to 2008, I worked part-time as a fitness professional. I was teaching group fitness classes in addition to my office job. And that was from 2003. So really collectively, I worked in the fitness industry from 2003 until we switched over to business coaching in January 2020. And I have done anything and everything in the fitness industry. I started out working in the commercial gym, first as a group fitness instructor. And then when I decided to leave my office job, which was an IT consulting job, I used to work for some big companies like IBM and Booz Allen Hamilton, and then like a smaller consulting firm called Acumen Solutions. When I decided to leave, I still was doing group fitness coaching, but then I also got into personal training, and I was working for 2 commercial gyms. And then with that, I was doing that in the Washington, D.C. area, because that's where I went to undergrad. And I'm originally from Boston, which that's something that you and I bonded on immediately, which is awesome. We're both from Boston, Massachusetts.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter where you are in Massachusetts, like you're from Boston. You just say Boston.
Yeah, it's exactly. I saw a guy in the grocery. I'm in LA now. I saw a guy in the grocery store yesterday. He had a Patriots hat on. I had like a Red Sox mask on. And we're both like, yeah. Go Sox, go Pats. Like that's just, it's always, it doesn't matter. You're from Boston if you're from Massachusetts and you're not still in Massachusetts.
Exactly. So I moved back to Massachusetts in 2009. And that's when I met my husband, and we decided to open up a small personal training gym. And it's like a private studio style gym, and we specialized in kettlebell training. So I left the commercial gym in 2011. I left the commercial gym to run my own gym with my husband, and we did that for 5 years. And then we closed that down in 2016. We moved out to Vegas because my husband is an athletic trainer. And so, we had pretty much had it with owning a facility. If there's anyone who's owned a facility as a fitness professional, it's a very unforgiving and challenging business. And I have some clients right now who have a combination of having a facility and an online on-demand site. And I'm just like, man, when are you guys going to get to the point where you're like, screw it, we're out of here, we don't do this anymore. So anyway, we shut down our gym, and my husband decided to get back into athletic training, and he ended up getting a job with Cirque du Soleil as the head therapist for Zumanity. So that took us out to Vegas, which it fulfilled. This was actually like something that we manifested, and we didn't realize it until after it all happened, which was like in the winter of 2015. And you and I chatted about this a little bit, like, you know, what brought us out west is like getting out of the winters of Boston, right? Like there's so many things I love about Massachusetts, but there's like, I do not miss the brutal winters. And in the winter of 2015, we got 7 feet of snow in a 3-week period, and like no exaggeration. There was just like, you would walk out of your house and there were just like walls of snow. It was like standing in between. You were in an igloo when you walked out of your house.
Yep.
Oh yeah, and like backing out of your driveway was like, let's just see what happens.
Yeah. If the plows haven't just pushed all the snow across your driveway, you might be able to get out. Yeah, no, I'm sure that people that aren't from, you know, sort of a northern snowy area might not understand what this means, but as you're describing that, I can see it perfectly in my head. And you just, the kind of the dread that used to inspire in me when I would have to go out and know that it's like, I'm going to have to do a lot of shoveling just to get my car to move. So yeah. No, totally understand leaving. Boston's a great city, but the winters are brutal.
Yeah. That was like the things that made me the most angry were like cleaning off my car in the morning. And it got to the point sometimes that like, no, it didn't matter. Well, first I knew I was from Massachusetts because when my husband bought me like seriously like a human-sized snow brush, I was actually excited about this. But there were even points where I was just like, you can't even do the snow brush. I have to just be a human snow brush and get the snow off my car. But anyway, so it was that winter that we were like, okay, as soon as we're done running this business, we are going to move somewhere where the weather is better, we don't have to shovel snow, and there's a lower cost of living. And so you know, it was like a few years later, because it was towards the end of 2016, that was when we decided to shut down the gym. And my husband got the job at Cirque, and it took us out to Vegas, which better weather, we're never shoveling, and there's a lower cost of living. And so we moved out here. And then when I moved out here, when we had the gym, I had a part-time online business, and I did want to grow it to full-time. But at that time, there was a lot of, you know, I felt a lot of burnout from the gym. And it was just kind of like, I want to say, I'm going to frame it like I took a gap year in 2017. I took a gap year just to like, my husband was working, and I was like, I need time to figure out what I'm going to be doing. I have my part-time online business. And what I did do when I got out here was I applied for a job at Cirque du Soleil, a strength coach position. And I got hired first on call, and then they transitioned me over to being the dedicated strength coach for their show, Ka. And how they have had, right now, like post-pandemic, because they laid a lot of people off, and I know they filed for bankruptcy, but they had, how they had their strength and conditioning department structured is they had 2 full-time employees. And then everyone else, even if they were dedicated to a show, they were part-time hours. They were like 15, 20 hours a week. So I was fully dedicated to Ka, but I was part-time hours. So I was working 15 to 20 hours a week doing that. I started to build a garage gym business. I had my part-time online training business. And then around 2018, after I was done taking my gap year, laying out by the pool, juggling my part-time jobs, I was like, okay, I'm ready to grow my part-time online business full-time. So that's when I just really got after in 2018 and started growing my online business full-time. And my goal was like, all right, my first goal was like, I want to just hit 6 figures with this, which I hit for revenue. I hit that in like less than 10 months. And then from there, my husband left Cirque, and he wanted to work in the online business with me. So we came back together to work together. And then we did that together, the fitness and nutrition through to the end of 2019. And then that's when we decided to switch over to business coaching. So that's what we're doing now with our business. And that's pretty much everything.
Cool. I mean, we talked before, and we obviously have a lot of common sort of geographical and also just sort of life experiences. But I think so, the fitness industry, and sort of what you described about sort of that, how it's a difficult industry to be in, and I've seen that because I don't work in the fitness industry, but I do enjoy sort of all aspects of exercise. I have a trainer, that stuff is great. It's a big part of my life and who I am. But I also see it's hard to be, it's hard to own a gym. It's hard to be someone who tries to take that, sort of fitness industry to the next level above being the personal trainer or someone who works in the gym or something like that, to try and take it from a job to an actual, sort of business or career, sort of get entrepreneurial with it. So maybe talk about some of that, some of that struggle that you encountered, and what sort of, obviously you had your own gym, but that burned you guys out. What was it that you encountered that was, kind of, you found to be problematic?
Yeah. So I think just to start, when I was getting ready to leave my consulting job, and at that I was making, 6 figures plus bonus. And most people, they get into working in the fitness industry as personal trainers, as coaches, because they just want to help people. They just want to help people live better, healthier, happier lives, which is why I did it. I loved I just love how I impacted people when I taught group fitness classes. Like, no matter how I transformed them within an hour, right? They would come into the room, whether it was to start their day or it was at the end of the day, coming in with all their baggage from the day. And then by the time they were done, they would their baggage was done and they were happy. Like, they would leave it in the room and then go home and be happy. And so doing that, it definitely took me some time to get to the point in my office job where I was just so out of alignment with my office job that I was miserable, and that I just hated sitting at a desk and doing the work that I was doing. And it really would pain me inside. And so I had to get to that point in that last year before I left, before I actually was like, all right, I'm ready to leave this steady job with salary, bonus, benefits that I'm paying for pre-tax out of my paycheck and things like that, to go and literally work for $0, starting at $0 in the commercial gym, right? That's
Yep.
and that's what the commercial gym setting structure does not set up fitness professionals to be successful, because you're coming in and you're making $0, and you have to build your business in order to pay your bills. And then you have to hit all these unrealistic, not you feel like you're out of alignment because you're really in it because you want to help people and you want to give a good service, which I know you probably see this a lot in what you do as a vet. Yeah. But the gym wants you to hit these numbers, so you're just in and out with people, which is not how you want to treat your clients. And so you find yourself to hit, trying to hit the gym numbers, working 7 days a week, 24/7. I remember my schedule was Monday through Friday. I would start at 6 a.m. and I would usually not finish until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And then on Saturday mornings, I'd come in for another stint from 8 to 2. Right. And then Sunday, what was I doing on Sunday? I was just completely fried, trying to recover to go back into the next week. And so financially, it was definitely I had to be so miserable in what I was doing in my office job to be ready to have that challenge and do the work and come into the fitness industry to just really grind it out and make a much lower living. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the struggles. And then that's when people, and I see this all the time, I still see it now with some of our clients, when you're working for a commercial gym, you think that the thing that's going to save you from this is if you own your own gym. Mm-hmm. And so that was that was my dream. I'll just own my own gym. I'll own my own studio. And I'll end up making a lot of money, and it won't be the same. but it is the same. You go in to open that facility and you have everything that's going on with the commercial gym, right? You're still like working all the time, and unless you find some good people to help support you, but then you have to pay them. But then you also have all the responsibilities of a facility. So like for being in Boston, oh my God, there was so much like permitting from like, there was everything from like unexpected expenses. Like I remember one year we got a snow removal bill for almost $3,000 from our, it must have been 2015, from our landlord. And we were like, oh, on top of our rent, right? On top of our lease. And then, so like, in addition to that, there's all like the permitting stuff that like when you're like zoning and permitting, there's like just so much crap that you have to do. And that it was really hard for us to find good people, even like great interns, because when it's your business, it's your baby, it's your life, right? You're living and breathing it. So it's hard to find people who are equally as vested, right? Who are equally as passionate. We had one person, one instructor who taught for us, and she was someone who started out as a client for us, and she had her own full-time job, but she would teach part-time for us. And then she got it, but that's because we built this relationship with her as a client, and we were like, oh, she gets it, right? But you know, she was not enough to help us. So it's like you end up working just as much as you were at the commercial gym, if not more. It just completely takes over your life and becomes your life. And then some of the challenges that we had, and we see this all the time, especially we see this with entrepreneurs, and like definitely I see this amongst fitness coaches, especially like strength coaches who are just really stubborn and they're like, I can do everything myself. I don't need to hire a business coach. I don't need help. And that was how we started out. We started out without getting any guidance. And so we're like signing this lease that was like way over our heads, right? Yep. We're getting into these contractual agreements like that are way over our heads. Yes, we didn't specifically hire a lawyer. My dad is a retired attorney, and at the time, you know, he helped us a little and he referred us to someone to help us, but we made the mistake of making bad business decisions in terms of not hiring the help we needed to set up our business structure for success and to get into these agreements that ultimately we ran into some problems with down the line. And then you're also just like the day-to-day of managing a facility is really, really challenging. So when we finally, it was about like 2.5, 3 years in, we hired a business coach like halfway through, which was so stupid. Like we should have hired someone in the beginning. But at the time, it wasn't like, now there are a lot of business coaches out there for fitness facilities and online business. And that wasn't really like a really big, well-known thing at the time. So when we finally did, that was when we revamped our business model to move away from a lot of one-on-one training that time, so much time for money, into more group trainings and team trainings. And we created things like an intro offer that got people in for 30 days so they could get to try all the things. So then it set them up for success, and then it allowed them to try everything, and then honestly then they became vested and wanted to move forward with a membership. Right. So we did that about like halfway through, and at that point we were already like on the verge of burnout. So like when things started to get really good, we were just like, you know, we had business debt from just bad decisions. And then just energetically, we were just like toast. And we were just like, we started this out thinking this was going to be our dream and that this is what we wanted to do. And now we're realizing halfway through, like, this is not the dream. Yeah. This is not the dream at all. Yeah. So that's what like led to like shutting the gym down.
Yeah. It is, and we've talked a bit about it too, but it's fascinating to me, sort of the parallels between the fitness industry and sort of my side, the veterinary industry, in the sense that like nobody becomes a fitness trainer because they want to get rich, right? Because they're going to be this huge business person, right? And nobody becomes a veterinarian because they're going to be this rich business person. I could tell you, like, literally there is no person that goes to vet school and thinks this is going to get me to the top of like the top 1%. That's never a thing. It's passion. It's passion for fitness. It's passion for helping animals. Like it's the same thing. And so you go into it with this passion and you love what you do, and you want to help people, or you want to help animals, whatever, whatever it is. And I'm sure there are other industries that have this similar approach. but you don't necessarily know how to run a business when you do it, right? You don't know, and you see you work for someone else who basically did the same thing and started their sort of passion business, and you don't like working for them because guess what, it's not a very good business model. And then you're like, you know what, I'm going to do it better, even though I don't know what to do. I don't like this, and they move on. And so it's like, it's the same thing, veterinarians don't open veterinary practices with a business coach, right? And fitness professionals don't open a gym with a business coach when they start. You get in this sort of panic mode, this burnout mode, and you're like, I really need to get some help. But it's like you wait till your ship is already sinking to get a bucket to get the water out. You know what I mean? It's just like, not, you need to start looking at this stuff. And I'm saying this from the veterinary side too, but like, we need to start looking at the stuff in advance, because especially if you're in an industry that is just truly based on, essentially, it's elective, right? Like, people don't necessarily have to go to the gym. They don't have to get a trainer. They don't have to take their dog to the vet. It's not the same always. And now, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of people that love going to the gym and love fitness, and there's plenty of people that love their pets. But the reality is when it comes down to it, like, both of those things are coming out of their pocket when it comes to payment. And so it's I think that the clientele perspective is very different in terms of like, what is the perceived value of this service? And so if we, as the professionals in those industries, don't value our own services, then how are the clients going to? And I think that's, we touched on sort of some of these limiting beliefs, and how with your business coaching, how that becomes a lot of it, right? In terms of what you're talking to people about. So, I mean, maybe that's a good way to, or a good topic to kind of go into next, in terms of, that whole limiting belief system, and, what your thoughts are, and how to combat it, I guess.
Yeah. And that's like, and that was like the mission of starting the online business, or I should say shifting to business coaching, was we had such great success running an online business as fitness professionals. We actually we started to have that like schedule that we wanted, in terms of like the freedom of the time and different offers that allowed us to not trade so much of our time for money. And so it was like, from there, we wanted to be able to share that with people. Like, you can actually continue to be a fitness professional and have this like dream freedom of time and make money schedule that you're looking for. And to speak to what you were talking about with the limiting beliefs, one of the most common limiting beliefs that we see come up with people is related to self-worth and charging their worth, and really charging the prices they should be charging for the services that they are delivering when it comes to training. And yes, it is elective, but also, which like, it does make it, it does make it hard to, I think that can contribute to some of these limiting beliefs. But like we were talking about previously, most of your limiting beliefs are established by the time you're 7. So it's like anything else. So once they're established, then from there you start to create this life around it, right? Unless you work on them. And so then what happens is, if a fitness professional encounters a client who objects to their pricing, tells them they're too much or whatever it is, then that just validates whatever limiting belief that they have about their worth or what they should be charging. And yes, it is elected, but at the same time, it's also, if you're someone who believes in personal training, and it is important to you to invest in that, just like, it is important for you to get your Starbucks coffee, right? It is something that ultimately it's preventative. Like, it helps you to stay healthy and move and strong, and prevents osteoporosis and diabetes and being overweight and all those things, right? So, and definitely, like, that's one of the things that we work on with our clients, is to help them to own their worth and really dive deep into where are these beliefs coming from that you think that you should not be, like, you want to charge this amount, but you don't think that you should, and you don't think anyone is going to buy from you if you charge this amount, whatever that is, right?
Right. Yeah, it's like a vicious cycle. You have,
Yeah.
you know, well, if I charge more, I'm not going to have the clients because they're not going to want to pay that much. So I charge less. Now you have to work harder to make the same amount of money. You're burnt out. You're probably not performing at the best that you could if you were sort of, essentially getting appropriately compensated for what you're doing. Instead, you're trying to make it, sort of on a volume basis, right? So it's kind of like you get in that cycle where you're like, well, if I want to make a little bit more money, that means I got to see more clients, or I got to, whatever the case may be. And it's, I mean, honestly, frankly, that's where real estate has come in for me. It's like, I can do a lot of surgeries in a day. I can do a lot of surgeries in a day, but I'm limited by location, I'm limited by staffing, and I'm limited by time, right? And that's probably true in a lot of industries. I think it's probably true in like, if you're a fitness trainer and you train someone every hour, well, guess what? You have to train them for an hour. And it's like, so you're limited by the amount of time in a day if you want to expand your own earning potential. And so what are the alternatives? Charge more, reduce expenses, whatever, the normal things that, like in business school, that business people know all about when they try to, start, sort of your traditional business types. Whereas when you're talking about these passion businesses, like, fitness industry, veterinary, and I guess you throw things in like chefs and things that are very valuable, but also not every person values them, right? So then you have to decide that you're selecting for the clientele that really do value that, and realizing that.
And I think that's where in the fitness industry, I think that's where some of the conditioning comes from, in terms of, and then maybe it's the same in the vet industry. It's that, that sense there's two things. Like, one, there's this limiting belief that comes up, like, being a personal trainer is not a real job, right? Like, that has, and honestly, my husband's parents, they're from upstate New York, and they're just very conservative and traditional. And so, like, they never understood what I did. They still don't understand what we do now.
Yeah.
The only time they understood what I was doing was when I was actually working for Cirque, like 15 to 20 hours a week. That's when they were like, oh, I get this.
Is there something they can see online about that, or so, they can watch it on TV or go to it, right?
Yeah. And it was also because I was like working for someone else, but other than that, they didn't understand, like, they never saw like being like a personal trainer, and even an online personal trainer, as like being a real job. They just couldn't conceptualize it. And I think, and that comes up a lot. Like, I have, for example, I had one client, and her brother works in information. He works in IT, and he doesn't think that what she does as a fitness trainer is a real job. That's his judgment of her. And so I think there's conditioning that comes, that develops these limiting beliefs around what you should be charging. Because if you're like, well, if people don't really think it's a real job, then I really shouldn't be charging a lot for it. And then it also goes to, since it's like, it's a choice, it's an elective, it's not, it's not like the state is mandating that you have health insurance, so you have to pay for the health. It's not like that, right? So then you're like, okay, well, these people, they want to do it, but then they start to question your pricing or object your pricing because they want it to be a certain amount so they can fit it into their budget. So then you as the fitness professional start to appease the clients, right? Even though it's not really what you want, but that's what you do, because you're just like, I'm just going to feed into my limiting beliefs. I'm just going to feed into, like, I just want to get this client, and I don't think I can get, if I want to charge this much, I don't think I'm going to get a client outside of it. So it's like those two elements really condition the vicious pricing circle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and I can 100% relate to the, people don't think it's a real job. I can't tell you how many times we get asked, why didn't you become a real doctor? Right? Like that's very common, like in our families. Like our families and friends will ask us as veterinarians, why didn't you become a real doctor? And it's like that's a crushing blow, right? When it's coming from someone who is supposed to care about you, right? Like I went to school for a long time. I did a lot of extra training as a veterinary surgeon. Like I have a very specific skill set that took a long time to get there. And I was well beyond vet school and well into my surgical training. And my grandmother was like, when are you going to be a doctor? And I get it. Like, people don't understand. People don't know, like, she's kind of like, when do you become a doctor? And I have people, friends and family will call me and they're like, hey, my dog is blah, 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 and ask for advice. Okay, great. I'll give you advice. And then they're like, well, that costs too much. And I'm like, okay, but then why did you know what I mean? It's just, so when it's your own close circle that doesn't believe in what you do, it's hard to escape those limiting beliefs. It's really hard to do it when clients are telling you, well, you must not love animals if you don't do this for less money and things like that. And so it's a very challenging thing. And so I totally get what you're coming from. It's like, I'd imagine it's a very divided sort of view of it, right? Like you have people like myself, like I'm happy to pay for training. I love what it does for me. Like I love that. And I know that I won't do as well on my own, right? Like I know that I'm not going to have the same fitness goals, especially like as we get older. It's not easy to do it without, someone telling you what's the right thing to do. So I love it. Like I love my trainer. Like I would go more if, like I'm limited somewhat by time, but, and it's the same thing for us as veterinarians, right? We have some people that are like, it doesn't matter. They would do absolutely anything for their pets. It doesn't matter what the price is. And then there's people that will, won't pay for euthanasia and they would rather shoot their dog, right? There's just like, that's the stuff that we hear. And so it's crazy and it feeds into those limiting beliefs but I think that the problem is, and I think what you're, kind of describing with your business now and business coaching is it really has to come from the industry, right? Like you have to talk to the other fitness professionals and say, listen, like we are providing a valuable service. Like we are legitimately helping people live happier, healthier, longer lives, right? Like that's pretty valuable. And we, as veterinarians are doing that for pets. And so you have to look at it from the inside first before you're ever going to sort of change the sort of client's perspective of what you're doing, right? So and that takes, it's hard to do. It takes some belief in what you're doing, and it takes some ability to know that, initially you're going to have some people that might not be your client because they object to your prices or something like that. But I guess I would just argue that if you just work to be the best at whatever it is you do, it'll build. The business will build. You just have to kind of believe in it, I think.
Yeah. And there's two elements that we really focus on when we're coaching clients through this. And like, one is like internally within themselves, like identify, let's get down to like what the belief is, where it's coming from, and let's work on changing it. Like, let's work on like what we call like clearing space, which is identifying that belief and like getting rid of it, like realizing that it's not ultimately true. And then getting down to reconnecting with what you really, really want. Because we become very disconnected from our desires. We learn that to want things and to have desires is wrong, is selfish. You can't have everything. So we help people to reconnect with that so they can rewrite that new belief and rewrite that new truth.
Yeah.
And implementing tools related to neuroplasticity in terms of like affirmations and shifting tools to reaffirm that new belief, which like that's like meditation helps, other shifting tools like through like movement and visualization, like going for walks and like getting out in nature and like visualizing. There's
Yeah.
a whole list of them, but and you ultimately have to find the one that works for you. So we help first, it's like working on that belief, and also with that it comes from like you can't really control what other people are, how the other people are going to judge you, but you can control how you receive that judgment and what you do with that judgment, right? So you can either take that judgment, take it as fact, and just be like, make that the reason for whatever it is that you don't do. Or you can realize like, listen, like, you know, you've reconnected with what you really want, what your new belief is. And if someone is going to judge you and say like, this is like, this is not a real job, well, you have to just forgive them. Like that's them. Like that's their judgment of you. Do you ultimately believe that what you do is not a real job? No, like I know what I do like really helps people and is a real job. So it's about also releasing that judgment, letting go of those people, let them have their beliefs and just like really let that go and be okay with it. And then the second factor, and then the more you let go of the judgment and the more you believe in yourself and you like tap into like what your true beliefs are, and the more you let go of other people's judgment and like judgment of yourself, because you start to internalize like what other people are judging you, then the less you're going to see that judgment come back to you. Right.
Right.
And then the other aspect is related to that there are people out there just tapping into, don't worry about the people who aren't going to buy the price, right?
Yep.
Really focus on the people, because if there's one person who's going to pay that, there's like hundreds, thousands of others. And in both industries, it's like that. So it's like, don't worry about trying to change those people. Just really focus on those people who will pay. They value it. They want more of it. Like you said yourself, like the only thing that's limiting you is time. Like you have a family. It's just, it's time. It's not the money. Like you would pay more and do more because you see the value and you realize the value. And like the more you just focus on the people, which is essentially like your avatar, your ideal client, the more you focus on that, then the more you're going to bring more of those people into your life, paying and paying and paying, right?
Right.
It's like, it's like, what is it? Like when it comes to manifestation, it's like you attract what you think about the most, or you're like your energy goes where your intention flows, or your intention goes where your energy flows, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact of, I guess life is that people often they run in circles of people that are like them, right? So if you start to get one person that comes to your business as a client, whatever the business is, and they're your ideal avatar, well, guess what? They're going to tell their friends that are also your ideal avatar, and it's going to build that way. You have to put. I like what you said about, if people don't believe in what you're doing, they don't believe it's a real job, you have to forgive them, because ultimately, like, it's not your fault. No. It's their fault that they don't think that. It's their problem. It's not your problem. You can't, let that sort of impact how you look at yourself or how you run your business or how you do your job, whatever it is. I train residents, and so residents and interns. So I train young veterinarians, veterinary surgeons, how to do what I do, and a lot of them get very caught up in, like, if a client gets upset, or they get very caught up in the client's not doing the recommendations that I'm telling them to do, and it's like, I think that probably the reason they get so upset is because they think maybe they're not doing a good enough job, right? They're thinking, taking it on themselves, like, I'm not doing a good enough job telling them what the right thing to do is. Yeah. And I have to tell them all the time, you can't care about their pet more than they do. So it's not on you, it's on them. That's it. Like, you can do everything right, and they might not listen. and that's fine. Like, you have to I really do like you said, you have to forgive them, and you have to forgive yourself, because guess what? There's other animals to treat, or there's other people that want to train, like that. You just have to be able to not, I guess, internalize every one of those, negative interactions into your own limiting beliefs.
Yeah. And it does have to become like almost a daily practice, or a practice of like every time it happens, the way you move through it and you overcome it, and you don't let it take you over and start to like control your life and create your life, is by making a practice of it. Every time it comes up, you go through this forgiveness exercise of like forgiving it, letting it go, moving on, and just like knowing that you did the best that you could.
Right. Yeah. Your focus has to be on, I'm going to do the best possible job that I can do, whatever it is, right? Whatever your industry is. I'm going to be the best at this that I can possibly be, right? That's where I channel my energy, right? Like, I'm going to be the best surgeon that I can be. And if people don't care about having the best surgeon, okay, that's it. That's okay. Yeah. I don't, that's fine. And it's like, and I intend to take that same thing into real estate with me, right? I'm going to do the very best that I possibly can for my investors. And if they don't want to invest with me, okay, that's fine. I'll make someone else money. Right. That's it. That's how I have to approach it. And and I say it now like it's easy to do. It's not easy to do. I know that. Like, I've had all the limiting beliefs. I still have limiting beliefs. Like, but as you said, it's a thing you have to work on.
Yeah.
Essentially constantly.
All the time. Yeah, for sure.
It's just, and that's where, like, having a coach like yourself would it helps people do that. It's like, that's what I see my job as with the residents. It's like, yes, I need to teach you how to physically do surgery, but the reality is what I need to teach you is how to be a doctor and handle all of the other crap that goes along with it that's going to bring you down. Because it's like, I think we talked about this too, like, there's a tremendously high suicide rate in veterinary medicine because of the stuff we're talking about right now. It's not because people are like, oh, I really hate treating animals now. Like, that's not how it goes. It's like, I hate the abuse and the invalidation of what I'm doing. Right. That's really, and having to work, 1 million hours a week to get ahead in life. So I think that it's incredibly important to have these discussions in, whatever industry it is. I think it's great to have, coaches out there, mentors, however, I guess any word that people that will help people in those, get through those difficult times. And, like we talked about before, doing it ahead of time, right? Like, not waiting till you're drowning and you're going to shut down your business before you reach out to a coach to help you with that, because at that point it's probably too late. It's like, it's like marriage counselors. It's probably too late by the time you get a marriage counselor, right? Like, now you're just paying someone to tell you that you're going to get divorced. I mean, that's probably not true for everybody, but I feel like that is often the case, is like, people go to a marriage counselor at the last ditch effort, instead of going to a marriage counselor when you start to notice there's a little bit of a problem. But it's, I think these are really valid points for kind of both of our industries, and I think important stuff to talk about, really. So I'm glad that we are having these discussions.
And one thing, what you were just saying is like, if I can give the analogy of our gym, it's like, by the time we got the business coach, it was too late. We were done with the gym.
Right. Yeah.
We wanted to move on to the next thing, even though like the business coach helped us, and we restructured things, and we started like to do better than we were doing. And it was too late at that point, and we just wanted to shut it down. And all of these things, that it's important to make it a daily practice, because you mentioned the suicide rate. It's that, because this is the stuff that's holding veterinarians back. This is the stuff that they're not working on, that's driving them to, driving the suicide rate. And this is, and in the entrepreneur space, this is these limiting beliefs and these things are what we see holds people back from moving forward in their business. So having a coach and a community to help you to help you to voice what's going on, so that you can have people tell you, like, this is normal, this is okay. So it just normalizes it. And then it helps you to process it, work through it, and implement a daily system and a daily process so that you're always working on it. It's all about just, becoming that better, healthier, happier human being, right? And implementing those processes that help you to do that every single day, or those practices, I should say. They're more practices. Yeah. And then once you start to do that, then that will help you to move. For us, we see with our clients, helps them to move forward in their business. For veterinarians, this is something that will help them it kind of brings them back to their why. Like if they're doing this work, then because they start to lose their why if they're getting this conditioning. But then if they do this work on their limiting beliefs, and they have a community, and they have a coach, they have a mentor that's helping to hold them accountable and process, then it will bring them back to their why, as to why they're doing what they're doing. And then along the lines of just, why should you make sure that you charge higher rates and charge your worth, and aside from making it like more money, you shouldn't have to just make just enough money to pay your mortgage and buy your groceries and all that. You should be able to make more than enough, right? So beyond that, it's also about feeling alignment with you looking at energy. And I think we talked about this. I don't know if we talked about this, but looking at energy as a resource, really energy is a resource. And what the person on the other end is doing is they in exchange for your time and energy and effort and work, it's a value for value exchange. You're giving your time, your energy, your work, and all they can give you back is money. So it's a value exchange, right? And you need to make sure, if we're looking at money as a resource, then you need to make sure that you are getting enough resources to fill you up so that you feel good about what you're going to do. And if you're not charging enough, you're not going to get enough resources to be the super vet or to be the super coach that you need to be for that other person on the other end. And then you're going to resent yourself for not charging enough and settling and just sitting into low self-worth. And then you're going to resent the other person on the other end for not valuing you. So it's important to do that inner work so you feel good about charging these higher rates, and then really start to see money as an energy exchange for the services you're providing. Right. And having that good flow. And then that lifts you up more. And then you feel more in alignment with what you're charging. You feel more in alignment with your business. And then you're reconnected with your why as to why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's the value it has to start with yourself. It has to start with, you have to value yourself first, right? Because it's until you realize that whatever it is you're providing is value. And be honest with yourself. If you're not providing value, then provide value, right? If you're not doing your very best, then maybe you should charge less. But if you are, then realize that, and it should, it should be that, sort of an according exchange, whether, with energy for money, whatever it is. And I think it's just, sort of building that support system and your own foundation within yourself of these, self-beliefs and worth and value, and then sort of putting that out into the world. And that's how you're going to do it, do the very best that you can. And it has to be, it has to be industry wide. It's it's got to be something that, starts to spread through whatever industry, whether it's fitness, whether it's veterinary, whether it's, the restaurant industry, whatever. I know, you hear a lot about that in some of these other industries. It's restaurants are opening back up after COVID, but people aren't going back to work there. And it's well, guess what? Because they don't want to get paid nothing to be abused by the people coming back to so it's if people want to have nice things that are, kind of luxury items, and you can put, having a pet in there.
Mhm.
It costs something, right? There's like it, and it should. And so it's just kind of, anyway, it's a lot about, it's not all about the money, but the money is the tool to provide betterment to,
Right.
yourself and your clients. So I think
Yeah.
that's important. And I think, you mentioned, getting back to your why. And so that's probably a good segue into the questions that I try to ask each guest. And the first one is, in alignment with the name of the podcast being Know Your Why. Artemis, what is your why? What is, and I realize that it changes for people and we modify it over time, but what's your why? What drives you right now?
I want to help, well, all entrepreneurs at this point achieve, and I guess particularly service-based entrepreneurs achieve personal and financial freedom, because I've just seen such a struggle with that. I've had that with myself, and I've just seen it so much in the industry that I've worked in. And so that's my why. It's just really, you keep referring to it has to be industry wide. So, but we can only do what we can do, our part, right?
Right.
So my husband and I in our business, we feel like we are doing our part to help that. And by creating, like, we have 2 group programs, we have a mastermind and an academy, and then we also have one-on-one. And by having those like containers, right, we're within the industry, we are building this community bigger and bigger so that people can come together and start to make that industry change, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely that right now.
Yeah. And I would say, I keep sort of harping on the industry because I do believe that, but I think your point about we can only, like, I alone cannot change the veterinary industry. You alone cannot change like the fit, but as you bring that community together and you create these groups and people that are realizing they're feeling the same way and just being held back by their limiting beliefs, now they're finding out, hey, wait a minute, like Artemis is building a whole community based on this. Like other people are experiencing this as well. So I think that's important. The other thing I would say, and just like in a way to, because this is what I found for me, in a way to, sort of relate it to real estate too, is that if you don't want to put in the energy to change your industry, or you don't believe that it can be changed, then what you need to do is come up with something for yourself, right? So if you can't be valued in the way you feel you should be in your sort of passion portion of your life, well, guess what? Get invested so that you can create some passive income, so that now you are filling your energy bucket a different way, right? Like you don't have to work so hard because you have some money working for you over here on the side. Like building a business is a good way to make money, but investing is also. So it's kind of that's for me, one of the things that I thought, it was like, well, if I could never get to the point where it's like, I don't just have to trade time for money as a veterinarian, well, then I'm gonna have to create something else that I can stop trading time for money. So
and if I think of an analogy related to we're doing our part, right? Like, even though this part might seem small, it is making an impact. And if I think about an analogy, I think about the fitness industry in terms of what I represented, what I stood for when I was doing strength and fitness coaching was empowerment through strength training, and also how that built a strong mindset, and helping women shift away from focusing on what their bodies looked like, what the number on scale was, and focusing on what they could do. And I can't control that the fitness industry is driven by fat loss and just, these Instagram, social media images and things. I can't drive that it's driven by like the Tracy Andersons of the world, right? But what I can do is lead by example and represent what I represent and create my own tribe and community and my own movement, based upon whatever impact I bring, right?
Right.
And it might not be like the entire industry-wide impact, but it is spreading the message as far as I can spread it. So it's like, that's what, similarly what we are doing here.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think yeah, we could do an entire different episode on diet culture and things like that. But it's but yeah, it's a matter of just impacting where you can, right? You pick your battle and you go fight it, and that's it. You're not going to change every single person, but that's fine. You don't have to. It's sort of back to the whole avatar discussion. It's like you're going to impact and help the people that have similar mindset to you, and it's like, it's very unlikely that you're the only one who thinks what you think, right? It's right there. It's very unlikely that you're just on an island thinking this one thing. Like, there are probably a large number of people out there, and people just aren't really talking to each other about it. So next question, Artemis, tell us something, and you can't use that you're from Boston because I already know this, but tell us something that maybe people don't know about you, some hobby or guilty pleasure, or some special skill, something that might be unique to this podcast.
Okay. Well, there's like two things I could think of. Well, so two
is okay.
I can give you two. All right. I have a black belt in Kung Fu. And then also, before I started studying Kung Fu, I started studying ballet at a very young age. I was 3.5. So I studied ballet from like 3.5 till I was 27. And living in Boston, I used to go to the Boston Ballet, and I was in the Nutcracker 4 years in a row when I was, I was probably like, it was probably like 9 to 12, maybe like 8 to 12 or something were the ages. So yeah.
Amazing. That's funny because it's very possible I saw you in that ballet. My mom loves that one, and so we went a lot when I was younger. So it's very possible I watched you in the Nutcracker in Boston. That's amazing. And we'll put a lot of the stuff in the show notes. But what's the best way for people to reach out to you if they want to kind of continue this conversation?
On Instagram, just send me a direct message on Instagram. I love to connect with people on Instagram, and I read all my messages and message requests. So my handle is my full name, really long, Artemis_Scantalides, but I know you'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll have it all in there so people can find you. And final question for you. What I think we've done some of this, but what piece of advice might you give to someone who comes from a similar background, has had some of those same struggles, and now you're successful in kind of leading the way? What might you say to perhaps an earlier version of yourself?
Get a coach or a mentor, like immediately. Like, seek out the person who perhaps has gone through what you've gone through in the past and has overcome it and is where you want to be in the future. And just like, as soon as you can find a coach or a mentor, find someone, hire them, have them in your corner, and that way you start to create your support community. Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, find someone who's successfully doing what you want to do, and figure out a way to connect with them and kind of copy their model. So, well, that's great. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. This was awesome. I think honestly, we could take any of those branches of that conversation and expand on it. Maybe we'll do it again sometime. But thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time, Artemis.
Thanks for having me. This is great.